Hey everybody, Steve here at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood, California, and a funny thing just happened to me. I was walking around a section searching for the gravesite of the person that I came here to find today, and just by accident, a couple of rows away, I spotted the gravesite of someone whose name looked really familiar, but I wasn't exactly sure who she was. And I was standing out in the blazing sun, looking at her headstone, and decided to go back to my car to get out of the sun and to look her up on my phone. And as I'm sitting there in my hot car, someone walked up to the car and knocked on the driver's side window. He said he spotted me walking around the cemetery and knew who I was immediately because he watches my channel. So we said hi, and then I told him who I was searching for, and he said he knew exactly who she was. As luck, or maybe fate, would have it, he's a cemetery historian, and he specializes in the gravesites here at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Talk about perfect timing, right? So I asked him if he wanted to join me at her gravesite and tell us a little bit about her life.
So at the end of 1938, she wasn't in that good of health, and she took her own life by ingesting ant paste and cough syrup.
Oh, was that? Where did she do that? Because it seems like I just read about that.
It was a little cottage in West Hollywood, which I think is still there.
Because I think there's somebody else. Isn't there another actress? I think she's buried down in Orange County. She also died from ingesting ant paste or something. Was that sort of a popular thing back then? Or maybe that was...
I don't know, but I think you're right. I think I remember reading somewhere someone else saying that too.
How strange. Well, yeah, I was wondering why her date, it says 1890 to 1938, so she was very young.
Yeah, and so she was buried here by the Motion Picture Relief Fund at the time, which is
so like they raised the money for it?
Yeah, they paid for the whatever, but they usually didn't pay for headstones. They just paid to have you buried.
Oh.
So she was unmarked for like 50 years.
Really?
And then in the mid to late 1980s, actor Roddy McDowall came forward and paid for this marker for her.
That's really nice. I mean, I think a lot of stars do that for their stars, don't they? I've heard that.
I've heard that
a number of times.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I ran into you because I didn't really know much about her. I recognized the name, and of course I recognized the Biograph Girl, but I didn't realize she was the first movie star.
Well, the first movie star to go by a name.
To go by a name. So there were others that were also acting, but she was the first one who actually got her name. Now, was it because she asked for it?
I'm sure she did, but Carl Laemmle is the one that, of Universal, is the one that did it.
It turns out that the story about how this all came about is pretty interesting. Back in the early days of the film business, Florence Lawrence and Mary Pickford both got their start at Biograph Pictures, but Biograph Pictures required that their actors remain anonymous and not receive any on-screen film credit. They didn't want them to gain public celebrity status and as a result to command higher salaries. Apparently, this is what had happened to popular actors on Broadway, and the studios were determined to make sure that the same thing didn't happen in Hollywood in the brand new movie business. So at the time, Florence Lawrence, who was the most popular actress on the screen, was simply referred to as the Biograph Girl since audiences and fans didn't know her name. But all of that was about to change. In 1910, Carl Laemmle started the independent motion picture company and later Universal Studios. To lure the biggest star away from Biograph, Laemmle offered Florence a lot more money, name, film credit, and marquee billing, and she immediately became a household name. She appeared in approximately 300 films during her career and made a small fortune, but sadly eventually lost it all. She invested much of her money into a cosmetics store called Hollywood Cosmetics, but sadly the store was forced to close as a result of the stock market crash of 1929 and the resulting Great Depression. By 1937, she was nearly homeless and living with friends when she was diagnosed with a very rare bone disease that left her with chronic pain and depression. Since she didn't always reveal her true age, which wasn't that uncommon back then and even now, especially in professions where there's a lot of age discrimination, the birth year on her headstone is incorrect. She was born on January 2nd, 1886, and died December 28, 1938, at the age of 52 in a hospital in Beverly Hills. And it's kind of interesting to note that the very first American movie star was actually born in Canada. So Alan, you were saying, so you're a historian, and is this the only cemetery that you visit and keep the history of, or do you visit some of the others here in Hollywood?
I visit other cemeteries, but this is the main one that I
This is the one you know so well.
Right. But
So
yeah, of
let
course
me-
I've been to others.
Let me ask you, so you said you watch my channel. Is there anybody in here that I should visit that I haven't visited or that I don't know about?
Well, I don't
I mean,
know.
or any
I don't
like
know.
really interesting stories, or what do you think is like the most interesting person here? Or the most interesting game? I know that's kind of like on the spot, kind of
Yeah.
weird with thousands of famous and interesting people here.
Just right over here, a few rows down, is Pierre Collings, who was a screenwriter, and he won 2 Academy Awards for a Paul Muni film, and I can't think of the name of the film off the top of my head. Anyway, he too had a sad ending. He became ill and died really young too.
Yeah, there are just so many interesting people that I haven't, even though I've been coming here for years like you, and I come here all the time, but you know, you end up finding 2 or 3 graves at a time, and there's maybe what, 1,000 or more famous people here, or
I've documented. Well, it depends on your term, famous.
well, just any
In the business and people that have something that they've done, there's more than that here.
really,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Well, I keep finding people, so it's
And I keep finding people too all the time.
yeah.
You know?
A lot of times people will say on the channel they're coming from out of town and they want to come to the cemetery and see all the stars. And they're like, well, you're going to need to leave yourself like a few years because in a week you're only going to be able to see, a handful of people.
Oh
So-
yeah, especially if you do the whole city.
Oh God, yeah. And if you visit, like, there's 5 or 6 major cemeteries where all the most famous people are laid to rest, and there's probably 4,000 or 5,000 famous people.
Oh yeah.
Within all of those cemeteries. I mean, you could really just for a lifetime. Well, you've been doing this here for 20 years, right?
More, 25, almost 30 years.
Okay, so Alan, you said you have a website, you have a book, and tell us a little bit about the book, the website, in case people want to know more about you and the history of the cemetery, Hollywood Forever.
The cemetery book that I had was from over 20 years ago, and it's out of print now, but it's cemeteries in Los Angeles County.
Okay.
My website is called Hollywoodland, and it's my name, www.alanellenberger.com. ALLANELLENBERGER.com.
I'm glad you spelled that because Alan has like 25 different
yes.
ways to spell, right?
And I always get anything but the
right
right
way.
one.
Well, that's, I never realized, just sort of an aside, until I started my channel and people started leaving comments, that there's probably a half a dozen to a dozen ways to spell every single name. I mean, first name?
Yeah.
Forget about last names. It's just so weird. I had no idea that there were that many ways to spell every name. People are very creative, I guess. I'm really glad to have met you, Alan. I'm glad you came by and say hi. So until next time, thanks for joining us, everybody.
See you later.